I'm Billy S, and today we're ranking the bosses of Blasphemous from worst to best. And quickly, if you're a subscriber, just like and comment on the video to boost the algorithm. Everyone else, please enjoy, and if you want to parry that subscribe button at the end of the video, it's all good. We're trying to reach 40,000 subscribers. Blasphemous is a Spanish Metroidvania that takes place in a land inspired by religious iconography, heavily based around Andalusian culture, and very specifically the culture in Sevilla when it comes to Semana Santa, which, fun fact, Andalusia in Spain is where I grew up. I can't say I remember talking to a blind, bleeding baby, or dodging the spears of the Tres Angustias on the way to school, but who knows? So, let's rank these bosses and jump in with... At number 19, we have the Warden of the Silent Sorrow, the tutorial boss of the game. Wielding a golden candelabra, this boss looks imposing, but is actually incredibly simple. The boss will either do a jump to reposition itself, or it will raise its weapon to do a slam attack. The slam, when it hits the ground, causes a linear shockwave to appear that you need to jump over, but you can also just dodge underneath the boss's legs when they rear up to start the slam attack, allowing you to wail on the Warden from behind for quick damage. Rinse and repeat, the boss will go down extremely quickly, and you get to watch a weird cutscene where you bathe in the boss's blood. You can never have too much red in that helmet, penitent one. At number 18, we have Exposito, Scion of Abjuration, fought at the end of the Sleeping Canvases. This giant blindfolded baby is held by a wicker figurine made to look like his mother, and he is protected by a snake-like creature with a scorpion tail, potentially the craziest umbilical cord I've ever seen in my life. I don't like this fight because the focus of the battle isn't on the really creepy baby that feels like the target, and is instead on the snake. You have to attack the head of the boss, or the little weak spots along its body, to deal damage, but the movements of this snake-like creature can be a little confusing and very hard to predict. He can spit poison, he can shoot fireballs that you need to position yourself to avoid, he can use his tail to stab the penitent one, which I don't like because sometimes the tail appears beneath the boss's health bar, making it harder to see the attack coming. The baby also has a grab attack if you stay too close to it, where it can instantly kill you, so it's recommended to keep your distance from the infant. And of course, you have regular melee attacks from the snake tail, and a few extra projectiles thrown in every now and then. Exposito just doesn't highlight the strengths of Blasphemous's very specific, slow, methodical combat style. The only thing this boss does that I respect is be in perfect range of my charged heavy attack when it snakes on screen. Let me attack the baby next time. At number 17, we have the Tres Angustias fought at the end of Grievance Ascends. Of all the fights in Blasphemous, Tres Angustias is the one that has gone down my personal rankings the more I'm forced to fight them. The big reason being, this is an auto-scroller. The boss's arena is in a constant state of vertical movement, with the bottom of the screen coated in instant kill flames. So you have to constantly be climbing the outer walls and scrambling up the various platforms to keep from dying, all while avoiding the various ranged spear attacks of the bosses. Maybe you'll get the mace wielder throwing their weapon in a boomerang fashion. At certain points they can also merge together to form one creature, which then casts a large beam of light centered around themselves which you need to avoid. And then towards the end of the battle, the Tres Angustias go all in on the screen nukes, and you just have to keep avoiding light beams while getting your licks in. I just find this fight to be very hectic, and I have a lot of trouble with the climbing mechanics, especially on ledge hanging, so I ended up finding them really unenjoyable this time around. Not a bad fight or anything, but please never put me in an auto-scroller again. You wouldn't do a second auto-scrolling boss fight, would you, Blasphemous? At number 16, we have Perpetva, fought in the Mountains of Endless Dusk. This is technically a mini-boss encounter, but I wanted to include it as a notable fight in the story. Perpetva is the deceased sister of Esdras, a knight of the Anointed Legion. She appears to battle you, and has 3 moves that she can wield. The first is a lightning strike, where you see a slight particle effect before the electricity hits, just keep moving and you won't get hit. Sometimes the lightning strike can be cast at a quicker pace though, requiring a bit more luck and awareness to avoid. Lastly, she has a lance charge that sees her charge you down with a slow telegraphed line. You only get one opportunity to fight her here, dying and coming back, she'll no longer be present, so you've got to lock in and deal with her moveset to come out on top and earn your rosary bead as a prize. Some defense against lightning attacks, how tasty. I like this battle, it was a nice surprise just before diving into Hondo, and if you don't kill her here, you'll get to reface her in the Esdras fight later. At number 15, we have the Amanecida of the Chiseled Steel. This is one of the 5 New Game Plus Amanecida fights, and while I can't deny they are all extremely well designed bosses that make some of the battles in the base game look, well, basic, it does mean I'm more critical of the Amanecidas whose movesets didn't click with me as much, and the Chiseled Steel just had the least interesting moveset. But it's worth noting context here. These 5 Amanecida fights can only be fought on New Game Plus, and it's up to you the player whether you want to make your New Game Plus experience harder with specific penitences. Not only that, but in the Wounds of Eventide DLC, which was the final pack released for Blasphemous, changes to the main storyline of the game allowed players to obtain the Apodictic Heart of Mea Culpa, granting a free 25% damage boost to your attack power, which I did grab in my New Game Plus run. So I was technically fighting the 5 Amanecidas with a stronger build than was intended when they were first added to the game. But hey ho, I'm not ranking difficulty here, it's the moveset I was disappointed by. This Amanecida's main gimmick are a series of green circles that she can launch at you in various different combos. You're able to hit these projectiles away, making them fairly harmless, and I didn't struggle with them at all in my encounter. She also has a golden lunge, where she'll try to teleport and strike you from different directions, and you have to use the direction of the golden threads to figure out where she's coming from so you can parry her. This fight also has a unique mechanic where if you attack the boss, she will dodge and leave an explosive clone in her place. She can only do this once between attacks, so you just have to avoid the clone and then keep attacking the real boss, but I wish this was expanded upon. She needed more moves that revolved around creating explosive clones, and she just didn't get them. Instead, we got more green circle attacks that you can deflect, which makes this boss battle far less threatening to face than any of the other Amanecidas. At number 14, we have the Amanecida of the Molten Thorn. The second of the 5 Amanecida battles, she wields a lance, and with that comes a whole host of fast-charging lunge attacks and not really much else. She starts off with basic dashing across the screen, which somehow, even from my footage, you can tell I was struggling with. You have to block her dashes and get your hits in whenever you can. Every now and then, she'll teleport into the sky and begin doing diagonal slams onto the ground you also have to parry. I really like the variant of this attack that causes the ground to elevate in a big wave. Some of the other Amanecidas can cause this same effect, and it adds an extra layer of adaptability to the fight. Most base game bosses never messed around with their arenas. The Amanecidas didn't get the memo though, and they said, fuck it, let's make some waves. Literally. And she has the ability to summon explosive crystal spikes across her arena, which, if she then attacks, will cause them to explode in a pillar of light. This can seriously damage the player if you're not careful, as the pillars of light extend into the upper half of the arena. You have to destroy the spikes yourself by attacking them from the sides, or just positioning yourself somewhere that lets you avoid the light pillars when the Amanecida decides to break them. She also has the golden lunge attack from the previous entry, which I'm starting to sense is maybe one of their specialties. Overall, I just think the Lance moveset is really boring, but I like that they utilize the crystal spikes in a more interesting manner than the previous entry utilized its explosive clones. At number 13, we have Our Lady of the Charred Visage, fought atop the convent of the same name. She's one of the 3 early game bosses you can fight in any order, but I like to leave her till last because I find the areas preceding her to be pretty difficult. This is a bullet hell boss, though not to any crazy difficult extent. When I say that, what I mean is that all of her attacks are magic-based, meaning you don't need to worry about dodging her hands or her floating visage, you just need to worry about all the projectiles she can summon. The first is a laser beam which will telegraph where it's going to strike, before following the penitent one for a short moment. You just have to position yourself to lead the beam without running into a corner or a dead end. Though you have to be careful if she uses the pinwheel variant, where she shoots out 4 lasers that slowly rotate around the room. The same theory applies when dodging either laser attack, but this one can catch you off guard more often. She can summon a series of fireballs that slowly rotate around the center of her hand, an attack that also has a faster variant that is more difficult to avoid. Midway through the fight, she brings her second hand into the fray, meaning double the attacks and double the attention. One of her moves actually involves shooting fireballs at you though, which can be deflected, and if you're good enough, you can actually aim them at the weak spot on the boss on her forehead to deal extra damage. My footage here was from a few years ago, but I found this boss so much easier in my recent streamed playthrough, you have no idea. She's not actually that tough as long as you're comfortable with your moveset, and if you equip rosary beads that raise your fire resistance, you shouldn't have any issues with Our Lady. It's also worth noting you can summon the NPC Viridiana into the fight. She's an NPC you'll meet behind most of the major important bosses in the base game, and she can heal you at low HP when you're in the fight. But you can only have her assistance for 3 of the 5 bosses she's summonable for, as each time you bring her with you, she gets older and eventually dies. But for this fight specifically, she is a great help. At number 12, we have His Holiness Escribar, Last Son of the Miracle, the final fight of the first 2 endings of Blasphemous. This is a 2-phase fight that sees you first taking on Escribar in his humanoid form, before being teleported into a fight against a more towering spiritual form. The first half of the fight has Escribar warping from one side of the arena to the other, summoning 4 different miracles to attack you. The Fiery Miracle, where he shoots fireballs at the player, the Arcane Miracle, where he fires magic missiles that you have to jump or duck over to avoid in alternating fashion, the Putrid Miracle, where you have to avoid toxic bubbles that move towards you, and the Fulgurant Miracle, which causes lightning to strike down the Penitent One. For most of his attacks, Escribar has a shield to protect himself, but if you come with a fully upgraded Mea Culpa, you can decimate his health with wicked precision. When becoming the last son of the miracle, Escribar will continue to use his magic attacks in varying ways to try and pin you down. You have to attack the golden dagger that he summons, striking the eye until it stuns. Then you can climb a series of vanishing platforms to strike Escribar's head and take him down. This second phase really reminded me of Gamma, the final boss of Mega Man 3, as both battles have you needing to parkour your way up to a higher weak point. The problem here is that Mega Man 3 was a platformer from the 90s, Blasphemous is a Metroidvania from the late 2010s, and to put it bluntly, platforming is not this game's strong suit, and it never was. Choosing to make your final boss platforming focused instead of providing a true combat-heavy challenge is just a very odd choice to me. It's to the point where I actually think Crisanta, the boss you faced prior to this, had more of a final fight vibe than he does. At least Escribar's Spanish voice acting is top tier. Anyway, we're not done with him. At number 11, it's Escribar, Sentinel of the Eternal Procession. When going for the true ending, we ascend to the other side of the dream. This is meant to be a form of heaven for the believers of the miracle, where they walk in an endless religious procession. This is also where the High Wills reside, 3 faces that we've come to kill. But they resummon Escribar as their sentinel, forcing him to face us one last time. This fight is special in that if you die here, you do not respawn at your last prie-dieu. Instead, you appear at the start of the battle and you continue endlessly, eternally, until you slay Escribar. But you no longer have access to your prayers or rosary beads. The weapon you have is your sword, the Mea Culpa. It's also an auto-scroller, which, look, I get it, but good god, I don't like auto-scrollers. Escribar has a handful of attacks he can use, the most annoying of which is when he summons toxic orbs around him and slowly moves in your direction. I can't time this attack for shit. It's a me thing, it drove me up the wall. He can summon lightning bolts across the stage that you have to avoid, then barely move yourself due to the nature of the auto-scroll to avoid the blasts. He can summon fireballs that aim at the Penitent One, which can be tricky to avoid if you're not careful, and towards the end of the fight, he moves to the center of the arena to cast magic until either you die or he dies. He died very quickly, so I never really saw this attack in its entirety. And also, if you fall into the void at any point, the fight resets. My favorite moment here, though, comes when he charges up a giant laser. It is unavoidable until Crisanta appears, becoming your ally in this final fight and shielding yourself from his wrath. It's such a cool moment, as she had been swayed by the High Wills and chained by the devotion they forced upon her, meaning this is her first true act of defiance, her blasphemy, if you will. I don't care much for this fight in all honesty, it's not really playing to Blasphemous' strengths, but then given it's more cinematic and unreliant on your build, I can forgive it. The endgame of Blasphemous doesn't do much for me once you get past Crisanta, but that's okay. You'd be surprised how many games can't pull off a perfect final boss. At number 10, we have Piedad, the boss of Mercy Dreams. One of the 3 guardians of the humiliations, Piedad is the easiest by far, and yet between him, the Charred Lady, and Tres Angustias, he ends up being my favourite fight. This is because it's a battle that focuses on pure combat. There's no crazy magic that you need to dodge, nor is there an auto-scrolling arena that threatens to burn you to a pulp. Instead, it's a simple fight with mechanics that get slightly tougher as the battle progresses, and that's all I really want from an early game boss. He has 4 different attacks he can cycle through. The first is a simple swipe where he bends down and attacks forwards. You just have to jump and you'll dodge the swipe and get some free hits in. His second attack is a smash, which you just need to run away from the boss from, as after the slam, various sprouts will rise up from the ground on both sides of the boss, and later in the fight, those sprouts will cover more of the arena. He has a spit attack where you can shoot these vine sprouts onto the battlefield, forcing you to attack them and clear them off lest you get blocked in. And lastly, he has a vine stomp, where he stomps in the direction of the penitent one, causing vines to flourish after the impact. For this attack, you just have to dodge beneath the boss as he's beginning his stomp, sliding under the legs to avoid damage. Rinse and repeat the moveset until the boss is down. Once you learn the tells for each type of attack, you can very easily get through this fight. It's quite entertaining going and looking at old Reddit threads of people struggling with him though. Maybe I should do a Blasphemous community ranking sometime soon. Would anybody want that? At number 9, we have Melquiades, the exhumed bishop, the boss of the Mother of Mothers. As a fight, I think Melquiades is entertaining enough. He has a large staff that he can use to smash the penitent one when they get too close. He can summon heavenly beams to strike the arena, which you need to avoid as carefully as you can, and he can do a variant of this attack where he shifts across the arena, periodically slamming his staff down and creating more beams you have to avoid. And unironically, that is all this boss can do to hurt you. Well, aside from the hands, of course. See, Melquiades is dead. This is a skeleton that is being puppeteered by a series of hands from beneath the arena. They are the ones trying to fight you, and on top of the other attacks, they can try to grab you with their palms. To damage this boss, you have to attack the hands holding him up, and once the last hand is cut down, the boss drops to the floor and his head becomes a weak point. Rinse and repeat until you sever the skeleton from its procession. I just love the design of this boss and how it's a corpse being held up by its procession. They're so desperate to have someone to follow that they can't even allow their archbishop to rest in death, parading his skeleton around for all who would pay attention. Low-key reminds me a bit of what's going on IRL with celebrities who pass away and companies using their likeness for AI. Maybe ChatGPT should play Blasphemous and realize the futility of its existence. At number 8, we have the Amanecida of the Golden Blades, who wields a large axe. This was the first of the Amanecidas that I fought, and I'll be honest, it was a good first impression. She wields her axe in a similar fashion to Quirce and his sword from earlier in the game, throwing it around like a boomerang in some attacks. Other times she wields it with pure aggression, with vast sweeping slams and energy waves that rock the floor. She has a spin attack that has her launch down onto the ground before causing the arena to erupt in waves of rocks. And sometimes she can throw her axe to the ground, having it slide along the arena in the direction of the player. Effectively, she's all about hard-hitting attacks and using her axe to home in on El Penitente, while enclosing us in an ever-shrinking arena. This is because waves of fire appear to the left and right of the battlefield, forcing us to remain closer to the boss as she continues her assault. I mainly struggled in the first half of the fight because I just didn't know what to expect from these bosses, especially when the Amanecida began to reconstruct her pink gem shield. I didn't know you could interrupt this until someone on stream mentioned it in chat, so I was tanking explosions I didn't need to tank. There was also one attack where I think the axe was supposed to be visible, but it wasn't. I'm gonna show it on screen now. Is this intentional? Because it kinda took me out a little bit if it was a bug. At number 7, we have the Amanecida of the Bejeweled Arrow, who wields a large bow. This was easily my favorite of the 4 Amanecidas, because the bow really allowed her moveset to feel wholly unique compared to the others. I love this attack where she just places a series of arrows above the arena, letting them hover before firing them all at once. It really reminds me of Dio in JoJo's, when he's throwing knives around while time has stopped. She often combos her attacks with this ability, where the arena is marked with lightning trails and you need to be out of the way when her attack is launched. I never understood how to handle this move, where she sets up a series of arrow shots going horizontally across the arena, which are then followed up by electricity strikes. I just never got the dodge timing right, and I tanked the damage every single time she used it. Like the others, she too has an attack that can cause the ground to tremble, firing a powerful arrow into the earth in an attempt to trip you up, comboing this into multiple shots. You want to have some lightning resistance rosaries equipped for this battle, as all of her attacks do lightning damage, and if so, you'll be fine. The main challenge is that she's almost always floating in midair, so you're never going to get off any of your combos, so chip damage is the way that this fight progresses. But eventually, you will overcome her, and it feels really good to do so. At number 6, we have Quirce, returned by the Flames, who can be found in the Wall of the Holy Prohibitions, a prison complex for the sinners. He ambushes the player late into the dungeon, knocking you down into his arena where you have to fight to survive. He wields his sword like a boomerang, with the blade seemingly having a will of its own. Sometimes he'll chill in a corner, whirling the sword around the ceiling and floor to try and carve you up. Otherwise, he'll try to dash into you, leaving fire pillars in his wake that you have to avoid. Eventually though, he'll just stab his sword into the wall, using his flames to attack with a melee-only moveset. This can either be a dash, where he attempts to knock the player down and stagger lock you, or a drop from the ceiling, where he'll land and cause flames to erupt in a pillar from the impact, which can also stagger lock you. You have to dodge between 5 to 6 of these flame pillars before being able to punish him, and then eventually he'll recover his sword and create a flame wave that covers most of the arena before beginning the fight anew. Rinse and repeat, you know the drill. I think Quirce is a very chill but very fun fight that only doesn't rank higher because a lot of his strategy relies on stagger locking the player, and that can sometimes feel very cheap in games like this. If I take damage, fine, but if it then causes me to take damage from the next attack because I'm still in a recovery period, that's when I get a little bit tilted. Just don't get hit, guys, it's easy, obviously. At number 5, we have Lampson, the first of the Amanecidas, fought only after defeating the other 4 Amanecidas and climbing the Ferris tree, where a doorway will open leading to her fight. I'm gonna be honest with you all, for as intriguing and as exciting as the Amanecidas were to face during my New Game Plus run, I've got to admit that Lampson herself was a tad bit underwhelming. I guessed the gimmick straight away, which was that she would use the movesets of the previous fights, but I was expecting her to weave each of those movesets together into a tapestry of new combos and ideas. Instead, what we got were 4 distinct phases where you faced one of her 4 weapons in a set order. I was expecting Sigrun the Valkyrie Queen from God of War 2018 levels here, and that just wasn't what I got. None of the movesets were changed from their previous fights, with Lampson simply challenging you to remember them all and adapt. It starts with the sword, then the lance, then the bow, and ends with the axe. And here's the thing, I've already talked about all these movesets. Because nothing has really changed, the same strategies you already used work again here, which means Lampson is a fantastic, well-designed fight that takes everything you've learned and asks you to put it together one last time, but it also means she doesn't go that extra mile to make herself stand out amongst her peers. And when the rest of the bosses on this list go above and beyond to really make their fights feel special, I just can't justify putting her any higher. I really wanted to be dealing with a more fluid moveset, but she's so rigid in her ways. Just like religion. But okay, that was a low-hanging fruit. At number 4, we have Esdras of the Anointed Legion, fought on the Bridge of the Free Calvaries at the midpoint of the game. Now, it is possible to skip this fight by finding the Tomb of Perpetva in the Echoes of Salt, which will put you on the path for the true ending. But if you want to experience every boss fight that Blasphemous has to offer, Esdras can be slain by just playing the game normally and not visiting that tomb. And it is worth experiencing this fight at least once, because his moveset is incredibly difficult for the mid-game, and takes a lot of skill to overcome. He He has 3 phases, denoted by when he starts mixing in tougher moves for you to avoid. The first phase has him using his hammer to try and strike you down. He has a storm attack, where he'll begin spinning across the arena, leaving lightning strikes in his wake, and you've got to jump over him and find safe spots to stand in. He has a simple forward spin that you can parry, and he's got regular melee attacks that can also be parried too. The first third of this fight is just about learning the moveset. Esdras has a lot of health, so you need to familiarize yourself to have even a chance of surviving. Midway into the fight, he begins breaking out 2 new lightning attacks. The first has him launching energy projectiles that you can duck underneath to avoid, while the second sees him strike forwards, followed by lightning attacking in a line in front of him. For this attack, you either need to get away from him or get behind him somehow. Then lastly, the spirit of his sister will appear to fight alongside him, using the same moveset that she had during your encounter earlier in the game. Meaning you now have to face both Esdras and Perpetva to come out on top. The game asks so much of you in this moment, but makes the satisfaction of overcoming this boss feel so worthwhile. When I realized I could skip this fight in future playthroughs to do the true ending, a part of me was happy because Esdras whooped my ass for a while, but also sad because this fight is just so damn cool. Just barely missed out on my top 3. At number 3, we have Isidora, Voice of the Dead, found in the ossuary beneath Albero. Added in the Wounds of Eventide DLC, Isidora guards one of the eyes of the traitor needed to achieve the true ending of Blasphemous, and as such, she gotta go. Immediately, her Voice of the Dead is powerful because it stops you from being able to pause the game while in battle. You can't switch out your rosary beads or your prayers, meaning you need to have a dedicated build before you enter the arena. Once inside, you have to deal with a host of attacks, from her spinning melee scythe swings to her fire pillars that attempt to burn the penitente to a crisp. I love the attack where a small flame appears across the arena floor, and once it reaches you, she appears to carve her scythe upwards, forcing you to dodge at just the right moment to avoid her attack and the follow-up flames. She's at her most vulnerable when she appears in the center of the arena, summoning homing fireballs to chase down the player, and in phase 1 these are manageable, even tankable in case you want to get some quick early damage on Isidora. You best learn her dash attack though, as getting hit by one of those practically ensures you'll get hit by another combo in the chain. Midway through the fight, she'll transition to her phase 2 moveset by causing a series of fire pillars to erupt in various patterns for around, 20 seconds? From then on, the torches in the background will alight, and homing fireballs will continue spawning from then until the end of the battle. All while, her attacks get faster. The only moment you can breathe is when she begins summoning the fireballs towards her, floating in place for a short while before traveling across the room, creating fire pillars as she goes. There are countless punish windows here to get damage in and quickly, and you need to take advantage. It's so important to be aware of her movements in phase 2 that I can't even imagine doing this fight damageless, but I find her animations and her whole moveset to be so fluid and fun to face that it just remains one of the most memorable fights in Blasphemous. I could totally understand if this was somebody's favorites, and honestly, if it weren't for all of the homing fireballs in phase 2, it would have been mine as well. But there are 2 other fights that just stand above it. At number 2, we have Chrysantha of the Wrapped Agony, who is fought at the top of the Archcathedral rooftops. Chrysantha is the final challenge that players must overcome before they can make their way to the end of the game, and this requires you to master the parrying and dodging system to defeat her. She has powerful attacks that will cut through your health if you don't take the time to learn their timings and block accordingly. She is aggressive, she has no mercy, and no time for your bullshit. Whether she's dashing across the arena to strike you down, or leaping into the air before slamming down and creating shockwave explosions, ugh. Midway through the fight, she begins to vanish, reappearing and forcing you to block her blade with parries. It powers up with a holy energy, and she begins to counter your attacks as well in return. Facing her in regular combat is already tough enough, but having her literally turn into a sword as she dashes towards you in the second half is insane. Now, if you played Blasphemous in 2019, this is actually the extent of her moveset. She hits hard, she slashes fast, her timings are tough to read, and she's got no problem going after you with everything she has. Now imagine me, with a slightly broken parry button on my Switch 2 Joy-Con, and you might understand why I was missing some of my inputs. This was a struggle. But if you aim for the Wounds of Eventide true ending to the game, you will face Chrysantha in her 3rd phase. Here she will continue to attack you with powerful strikes, and if you parry her, you'll need to then immediately dodge forwards and hit her to stun for a short period of time. This is very tough to pull off, but once you get into the flow of things, Crisanta's third phase is super satisfying to learn. Midway through, she'll begin using an energy blade attack that sends 4 energy sweeps across the arena, and if you can parry them, you'll be able to punish her because she has to rest for a moment after attacking. Manage to deal with this, and Crisanta on the true ending path goes down. You free her from the high wills, and she becomes an ally for you moving forwards. I'm really happy that my first experience with Crisanta was in the true ending form, because it truly made me appreciate her moveset and the parry system in this game. It's not the game's fault that my Switch Joy-Con's R button was having a rough day, and I figure with a perfectly responsive parry button, I would have had so much more fun. Crisanta is just on another level, and I'm so glad they went back and gave her fight the proper ending it deserved, alongside cleaning up her English dub voice acting a bit. Nothing beats that Spanish original though. And at number 1, we have Sierpes, the boss of Mourning and Havoc, a gigantic serpent that is responsible for the destruction of many a vessel in Custodia, and is one of the toughest endurance fights in the game. Sierpes has 3 very distinct phases, denoted by how high up the player is carried on his back, and depending on the phase, the boss will attack with more complicated setups and faster speeds. To damage the boss, you need to attack its humanoid tongue, which is often left vulnerable between attacks. The boss can lunge at you, with you needing to retreat to the edge of the arena to avoid it, and then you can attack the tongue as it pulls back. The boss can summon electricity in the form of orbs, which have a current pass through them. It's best to go directly to the tongue in these instances and just start hacking away, unless the electric current indicates it's connected to the weak spot. The boss can also summon energy orbs from its tail, which will slam down onto the ground and cause electric pillars to appear. With all of this, plus a series of attacks that change the state of the arena, like protruding bones from the snake's body to pierce the player, and the way the wind will begin to blow in later phases, giving you more trouble positioning, and you have a fight that asks a lot from the player. The boss doesn't change attack tactics all that much, beyond shifting his head from left to the right side of the arena from time to time, but what the boss does do is use attacks that are easy to learn, fun to punish, but having the health pool to treat you to a proper endurance race. These types of fights can be very hit or miss, as if you have a moveset that isn't fun to deal with, you're not going to want to bang your head against it. I didn't have this issue with Sierpes. Now granted, I beat him first try, but even then I found this fight to be very enjoyable, and I liked that I could see my progression as I got better at the fight, and we're raised higher and higher atop the snake's back. And visually, I love how stormy it gets until finally, we're swallowed whole by the beast and we burst our way out of the creature's head with our prize. The storytelling here is really well done, and the moveset just vibe with me in a way I wasn't expecting. It may not be everyone's favorite fight, I get it, but for me, Sierpes is just memorable, and I didn't see that coming going into this. And honestly, neither did he. And that's my list. Which Blasphemous boss is your favorite? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. I will at some point this year be streaming Blasphemous 2, so be sure to keep an eye out for that, as I will be covering the bosses in that game just the same. A massive shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing. It's $4.99. You get a shout out in the description at the end of videos as well, and you do get access to some special privated Let's Plays of Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1. If you want to follow me on social media, I have Blue Sky, I have Twitch, I have a Discord, I'm not that active in it, but you can mostly find me streaming here on YouTube every single week. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Adios.